right, welcome everybody back to another episode of the Creative Coach Podcast. I have today a treat. Brent Deitrich from Liveview Studios and the White Wren, which is a publication, and he does a lot more than that, but those are the big two. So I'm going to turn it over to Brent to introduce himself and fill you in on his years and years and years of prowess in the wedding industry. So without further ado, here's Brent.
Years and years and years make me sound like the ancient of days now. Yeah, officially about 16 years in the full-time paying aspect of being a photographer, and about 8 years being a publisher of digital and print magazines. And now we're venturing into other forms of multimedia, YouTube, podcasting, and a food blog actually is coming to the White Wren as well soon too. So those are all new things in the works this year. And yeah, I don't know. I've probably been I could call myself a photographer since high school, I guess. My first photos that I got money for was actually photographing dairy goats at a dairy goat show. And then I worked freelance for a newspaper for a couple of years, reporting on. Yeah, you didn't know that about. Did you know that about me?
I did. I did not know that you were a dairy goat photographer.
Yeah, farmer photographer. Yeah, we grew up. I guess, probably when I was 12 or 13, my parents got dairy goats, and then we showed them and bred them competitively all over the East Coast. And I became a dairy goat judge, which allowed me to visit almost every state in the country while getting paid to do it. And yeah, little sideline of my life that I don't always intro with.
That's amazing. Okay, I don't know how I didn't know that, but that's amazing. I love that.
we may not have talked about it before.
That is so funny. So yeah, I think we can all say without any debate that you have been in the industry for a very long time. You're old as dirt, evidently. I'm just kidding. But yeah, so anyway, I was super excited when you wanted to come on because you have so much experience in the industry. You've seen it through multiple seasons and like decades of business, recessions, when the economy's up, economy's down. And your niche specifically being publication, I wanted to talk about. And you guys are really great at marketing and all things like PR, like getting out there, getting your name out there. So that's what we're going to talk about today. We can start with the publication side of things because I think that's great. So like getting published, how do you get published? What's the benefit of getting published? And also what's the benefit of having your work in multiple places and having like a cohesive marketing strategy. So tell us about, from the publication standpoint of running a magazine, what are you looking for when people are submitting publications? Like, what are you looking for that's going to help people get published?
Yeah, I mean, as kind of cliche as it sounds, sometimes it's just a gut feeling. Sometimes something just comes through that you just look at and you're like, oh, it just hits something, it hits you in the feels. And sometimes there's not a reason other than just the emotion of the way it was captured or something beautiful in the details. And, you know, I feel like over all the years of being a photographer and then the years of being a publisher, like you see certain trends and things come and go with what people submit and what they shoot and how they shoot. And it's interesting being on this side of it because on the creative side of it, when you create something yourself and you send it to a publication, you're like on top of the world. You think you just did like the top shiz. And when you sit on the other side and you see work come in from all over the world to your desk, you realize that while you love what you did, it's a small pea in the pond, and that there's like 100 other people that are equally as talented. So it's a little bit humbling as a creative to like look at everything that comes through and be like, oh my gosh, there's some good stuff. However, I will say like another eye-opening factor of being on that side of it is you get to see just how repetitious the industry really is and how much of everybody's work looks very similar. And so, it's kind of like that as seen on Pinterest thing. Like somebody sees one thing and then everybody wants to do it. And all of a sudden you just have a whole bunch of stuff that looks the exact same, or there'll be like a particular venue that, somebody did a workshop at. I know there's a couple different venues throughout the country that we get a lot of particular shoots. There's, I think it's called Sunstone Winery in California. A lot of style shoots come from that. There's a venue in Georgia. I think it's called Swan House. Mm-hmm. A lot of style shoots come from that. So it's like you'll see these venues over and over, and then that's kind of weird too, because the people that have seen the previous shoots there, they go and they create the same type of thing there again, and so it comes through and it looks exactly the same. And it's almost like certain venues then start to just always have the same kind of look. So in that instance, like, it's hard, especially with like a really iconic venue or backdrop, it's hard to feature it over and over again in the same way. So I feel like what catches our eye is if we see that backdrop or that kind of iconic landscape or iconic venue, and it's presented in a different way with something fresh from what everybody else has been doing with it. Because it feels like there's only so many times you can feature the same place, and it just like it gets repetitious. And then I think that, you definitely see the trends come through as well. We've gone through probably about when we started the White Wren was like, the big film renaissance of the late 2010s, where everybody was starting to shoot film. People were getting into the fine art photography style. Everything is very put together, very curated, very editorial. A lot of non-smiling models.
Yeah.
Just very, very Victorian, very European influenced. And now the trend is shifting again. And I had a discussion on a podcast episode the other day with somebody about this, and just kind of this trend of like things being less put together, things being a little bit more realistic, a little bit more human, sometimes even on the verge of messy, which I know has become a thing that
the
like
messy
now
girl aesthetic is in.
The messy aesthetic. But I think it's come from a place of like people just wanting to feel some kind of authenticity again, especially in like a post-COVID world. I think it caused people to like just sort of recenter and think about what's important and what perfection is or really looks like. And I think that they are just feeling a little something more from those types of images. So now we're seeing a lot more of that stuff. And our last print magazine was called the Real Life issue. And we kind of focused on like finding beautiful moments in the in-between of life. So not everything feeling super staged, super put together, but kind of just some raw moments that had some really beautiful images attached to them.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that makes so much sense. I mean, the trends in the wedding industry are shifting constantly. And I do feel like with the new generation, Gen Z coming up and, they're entering the marriage age now, the marriage industry, whatever, trends shift so quickly for them. Like their whole existence has been on the internet. And so it's like constantly changing, like literally every year, which is very new. Do you think that's something we're going to see for the next like 20 years, probably while this generation gets married? That it's just like every year or two, the major trends are going to shift and change. And so vendors are going to have to constantly just be adapting to whatever they're into that year.
Yeah, I mean, that's interesting because we're kind of in this age of instant everything. I mean, we've pretty much married off the last of the generation that grew up without some semblance of internet in their lives. And so, people that are of marrying age now are typically ones that have spent their whole life on the internet. They don't know anything else. And so, yeah, they've seen things. They're used to a very in-demand way of getting things. They see something, they want it right away. They want the Amazon next 2-hour delivery. For all things in their life. And so that's kind of interesting in how that's going to affect the wedding industry and the way people consume media. I don't know if it's always a good thing. I think that there's definitely some value in life to having slowness. And again, I was just having a conversation with someone about this morning about like just the speed at which we consume, view, and live our lives is making time pass by faster. Mm-hmm. And the days are not as long as they used to feel. And even for our children, like I feel like the days pass by quicker because there's so much instant stuff. There's no periods of boredom. Everything is just consumed so quickly. I don't know that that's great. I think we have to strike a balance somewhere. But I think that as with like all things, like the living in the internet age is still very fresh. And I don't think that we have learned how to use self-control with it yet, or how to use it to our advantage, but still not let it like monopolize our lives. And so I think we're still in the learning stage of that. So will it last the next 20 years? I don't know. Maybe we will find some kind of new balance between being able to get things instantly, but also appreciating some slowness of life and some timeless quality of some things too, because you know, speed doesn't always equal quality. And you know, the same thing is true with wedding photography, wedding videography. I mean, this stuff usually takes a little bit of time to produce and to do it right and do it well. So, you know, it's not always an instant gratification thing. So it'll be interesting. I don't know what the next 20 years are going to hold in that regard. I think that it's kind of it's going to be a trend that we haven't necessarily seen repeat itself out yet. But life is filled with cycles, and what was once old usually becomes new again. So
like direct flash.
Like direct flash, like mom jeans from the 80s. I mean, you know, all these things came back. So even if there is like this period of like the TikTok of the wedding world with just everything being instant, I think that something will come around again that'll be different, because we tend to live life in cycles that way.
Yeah. Yeah. And we're going to come back to this topic too of like chronically online and styled shoots in the publication world. But thank you for sharing what you're looking for, like as a publicator, what you're looking for when people are submitting for publication, something new, something fresh, not necessarily trendy, although if it's a good trend, of course, it's going to help, but something new, fresh, not the same old all the time. So
and I think that let me just add one little thing to that too, real quick. I think that that's a hard thing for somebody as a creative to know exactly what is new or fresh, because you don't see the big picture of the world necessarily of like what all people are creating. And so I think that we look at our work that we create and we're like, oh, this is new, this is fresh. I think the bigger thing is like, I don't know why that just did a thumbs down in the video.
I didn't do that.
I don't know. I'm like moving my hands around and Zoom is doing something weird. I did not give a thumbs down. Wait, did it come through in the video? I think that's actually something new that Apple is doing in their webcam thing. Yeah, I saw it in an update that you can
like
do.
If I do this, does it do it? Oh no, I don't know. I didn't mean to.
I updated my Mac the other day and I saw that it had some kind of gestures or something. Anyway, I think the bigger thing is like doing things that you create from your heart and not caring whether it's something that somebody else has done or what feels popular at the time, because there's you can tell when something comes through that you know has been somebody's just unique creation of their own, and they've done it without looking at Pinterest or caring what the rest of the world is doing. Those kind of things stand out. And it's tough because you feel insecure as a creative. Sometimes you look at what you make and you see what everybody else is making, and you get the imposter syndrome of like, am I just faking it? Is my work really good enough? But I will say that from the publication side, you can tell those things.
Oh, that's heartening to hear. Yeah, for sure. So, you know, publication is one part of a marketing strategy for a company, and it's one part of marketing that we do like as photographers and videographers. You guys, I would consider like very marketing and PR savvy. So what are other avenues that you think are really beneficial to market yourself in within the wedding world?
I mean, I have always told people over the years, regardless of what kind of digital marketing you do, there is absolutely no substitute for boots on the ground, doing the dirty work, networking in your town, because that is where you're going to most of the time do the majority of your work, unless you want to be a destination person. And quite honestly, people that do destinations, sometimes they do it for a couple of years and then they're tired of traveling. Some people never get tired of traveling. It just all depends on what your personality is.
I was on like 100%
So,
destination right before the pandemic, and obviously like gone. That entire sector of my business was gone for almost 2 years. And then I got
yeah,
pregnant. And now I have a
yeah,
little baby at home. I don't want to travel as much anymore. Like
yeah,
it's
yeah,
not, it ran its course for me. And it was a very short-lived, like 2 years of traveling constantly. Super fun.
yeah,
Now it's done. And I'm okay with that. But you're totally right.
yeah. Yeah, and I mean, we went through that stage too, where like in the early days, like the first 5, 6 years, like we traveled all over the East Coast. We did long drives. We took our, we hauled our team to Rhode Island. We were all over the place. But yeah, now I have kids. I've got 3 kids under 10, and so I don't really want to be doing that as much. If my team wants to, that's fine. Like they can travel. We still get inquiries from destinations, but I think that's another thing too, as you mature personally in your business and your life changes, and sometimes it doesn't fit anymore. Um, but anyway, so yeah, I think making the time to invest and make connections with the vendors that are going to refer you in your area, I think that that's invaluable. I think that you need to realize that whatever kind of marketing you do is essential in the beginning, but it's not going to yield overnight success. I think that's one of the biggest things that we see and hear in the publication world. And we're not here to guarantee results. We're here to say, hey, we've got an audience. We get XYZ number of hits. We're making impressions on 1 to 2 million people each month through a combination of social media networks, website hits, whatever. We will lend that audience to you for you to take advantage of. We can't guarantee you're going to book work from it, but here's an audience.
Yeah.
And I think that people will often look at that, and after like 6 month period, and we always do like 1 year contracts typically, but sometimes after a 6 month period, people will be like, I haven't gotten any leads. And it's like, well, you might not. I mean, you may or you may not. I spent probably at least the first 6, 7, maybe into year 8 years of my business advertising in multiple places on multiple blogs. I can probably count on 2 hands the number of leads that I knew directly came in from those advertising sources. But I still kept doing it for name recognition and just brand building. And by year 9, 10, 11, we didn't need to do any advertising anymore. We haven't paid for advertising as a business of ourselves for the last couple of years because we took the time to do that initial brand build, networking with vendors that would refer us, and then everything just kind of snowballed from there by word of mouth and just value of reputation. So that's the thing I would encourage people with a marketing plan is like, it's a long haul thing. You're not going to see instant results. Plan for your marketing thing to take a couple of years. Hopefully you're planning to be in business for like 10 years.
Yeah.
If you're only planning on being in business for 4 years, then maybe you want to see an instant result, but it takes a little while. Most businesses fail in the first 5 years. So it's a long haul game with that. And then diversifying where you're doing that marketing too. Like, don't put all your eggs in one basket. Don't only advertise on one thing. Don't only do on the ground networking without digital marketing. Like, you got to do a combination of all of those things. Connecting with people on social medias, doing a little bit of digital advertising, whether it's blogs or sponsored Facebook ads or whatever you find works, and then doing it in person too. So.
Yeah. Yeah. And to add to that, 2 things. One, I was recently in a mastermind, like coaching group, and the marketing expert in that group was saying that weddings you can kind of see an 18-month cycle. So the work you're putting in now, you're going to reap it in about 18 months because brides are booking about a year out. So you're not reaching this year's people, most likely. They're probably already booked. So like you're really marketing towards next year's stuff. And you might have 6 months of a project sitting like on your hard drive that you have to edit, give to the couple before you're ever going to be able to market with it. So like that's also time in the marketing life cycle. So they're like the work you're putting in
Yeah.
now, you're going to be reaping it next year. You're not going to see immediate turnaround because people are already booked for this year. You're working towards next year. So one, that's really frustrating when you're new because it feels like you're just spinning your wheels and working so hard for absolutely nothing. And it's not because people don't like you and you're not good at what you're doing. It's just because people are they're already in their work for this year. Couples have already booked and people are just focusing on the here and now. You're working for next year. And I forgot what my second point was going to be, but that was very encouraging for me to hear like, okay, the work I'm doing, I'm not going to see it soon. Like it's the long game, especially in the wedding industry.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, there's probably other short-term uh, things like if you're marketing to like, mitzvahs or parties or things that people are
Yeah,
planning in the shorter term that you'd see a quicker result from. But yeah, I mean, with weddings and then the cycle of relationships, like it takes the average person 2 to 3 years from the time they meet or get engaged till they're in wedding stage. So yeah, it's a long cycle.
it is. It is. So yeah, like networking, I also would say like networking is the number one like top. Next for me personally would probably be that social media piece. Like I'm I'm not huge on social media. I'm not very good at it, but I'm really trying this year to like be a little bit more consistent about it.
I
But
noticed.
oh, this was my second point is in regards to social media, you don't like necessarily own that audience. You don't control the algorithm. You don't get to decide if people actually see your stuff. Like Meta gets to decide is seeing your stuff.
Hmm.
And so, like, as much as you can get those people into some kind of platform that you own, so like getting those people onto your email list, getting those people from Instagram to your website to try to fill out an inquiry form so you can have their email, have some way to contact them outside of just
Yeah,
social media. Like, it's going to work so much better because social media is so quick and fast. It's a scrolling platform. They're not meant to sit and like take in your content. They're meant to keep going to the next thing because that's how Meta makes
right.
money. you they're supposed to scroll past the ads and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, get in contact with people. Don't just rely on social media. And then of course
Mhm.
publication. It's great for SEO. It's great for like your reputation. You can put that you've been featured on the White Wren and stuff like that. So love it.
Yeah.
You have
And
anything
there's
to
not
say?
many places to get featured these days either. I think that's the other thing. People over the years have had I think, sort of a jaded relationship with publications. Some that, it feels more like a pay to play type of thing. Like you're only going to get featured if you're paying to be an advertiser with them. And again, sometimes it's that instant thing of people are like, well, I got featured, but I didn't book anybody from it.
Mhm.
But again, it's just a long-term thing. Like you said, SEO, you're getting backlinks to your website. You're putting your name out there on something that's going to be, you know, scrubbed by a Google bot or something at some point and pick up your name
Mhm.
and the street cred of it. But yeah, there's not as many options these years. It's
There's
something that
not.
we've been trying to pivot and just sort of see like where is the future of this for us because it's hard to run a wedding blog in the traditional sense that it's been run for the last 10 years and still have enough revenue on it. So that's kind of why we're diving into um, the sort of rebrand that we're doing this over this last year and getting into some new things. So
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I feel like we can't talk publication and content marketing without touching on styled shoots. And okay, so here's my deal. My like very controversial styled shoot opinion that also makes me a hypocrite, and I totally understand, but I'm going to say it anyway, is that like styled shoots is the worst thing that's ever happened to couples, in my opinion. Um,
mhm.
but it's a great thing for vendors, which is why I participate in them. But the reason I say that is I do feel like styled shoots have kind of given people, the masses, unrealistic expectations of the wedding industry. and like what they can actually get for their budget. Like a typical $40,000, $50,000 wedding budget does not come close to what you see on Pinterest and in most publications. Like a styled shoot is a place for vendors to show up and show out and like try to climb to the next level in weddings, which is why it's great for vendors. But I do think it's kind of this like catch 22 for couples. Like, oh yeah, I know that vendor can do these really amazing things. But in general, the couples aren't going to be able to purchase that aesthetic without just a massive budget. And everybody wants to reach the couples with the massive budgets because there's not a huge, oh, we're running out of time. We might have to start a new chat. We have 10 minutes. We can do this in 10 minutes.
Okay.
You know, all the vendors want to reach a higher paying demographic because profit margins in the wedding industry are not great. A lot of us are not making a lot of money, while simultaneously weddings are very expensive for couples and like the average person. If you don't have some kind of family money or incredibly high paying jobs, you're not going to get what you see on Pinterest and in these publications. So that's kind of how I feel about styled shoots. I just think it's this like weird in between, unless you're like working in the luxury industry and you're very solidified in the luxury market, then it's fine. Like that's actually going to be your demographic that's going to hire you. But for the most part, like 90% of weddings are on a budget and it's not going to look like the styled shoots. So like, I don't know. That's how I feel about them. But I understand that they're important for the industry and for like pushing forward the weddings people want to have and things like that. Testing skills, learning how to do new things, testing out things that you wouldn't necessarily test out on a wedding day because you don't know if you can do it. Like the direct flash thing. I was like, I'm not going to walk onto a wedding and attempt direct flash for the very first time on someone's actual wedding. I'm going to test this out at a styled shoot and make sure I understand perfectly how to do it before I ever do it on a paid type thing. Like I think styled shoots are great for that. But yeah, it's living in the tension that gets me sometimes.
Yeah, and I think that's where you see like a lot of the repetitiveness too with stuff that we get in is in styled shoots because it's there's scripted. There's kind of a formula with weddings. It's a little bit more unscripted. I think that and sometimes some of the things that you see at a shoot that's obviously a styled shoot, and I kind of have grown to hate that word styled shoots. Like I almost prefer referring to it as just an editorial. I don't know why, but it kind of bugs me now. But like some of them are just impractical ideas too. They might look really pretty, but we had a little bit of fun on our Instagram at the White Wren the other day because my social media manager posted a really pretty picture of this beautiful, long table. It was filled with flowers on either side of it. It was about probably 4 or 5 feet deep from where the chairs sat, like going out each direction and just long. And, at first glance, you're looking at it's really pretty. And then some people started commenting and they were like, how do the guests get to their chairs? And so we started to have a little bit of fun with it. We were kind of replying back and we were like, probably parachute drop, they come in from the ceiling like Superman or something. So we were kind of making fun of it a little bit because it is impractical. It's like, how do you get in there? Do you run on top of the table?
What's also impractical
run on top of the chairs? Like
is a champagne tower. That is the most impractical thing at a real live wedding I've ever seen, to be honest.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's only for a photo. It's not practical. It makes a mess. Someone has to clean it up. No one wants that champagne. They want like champagne poured from the servers at the bar. Like, yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. And something else I think is a little nefarious about the styled shoot situation is you could have an entire portfolio that's styled shoots and it could look amazing and you've never done a real wedding and someone hires you based off of a photo shoot, not an actual wedding, which is extremely different. High paced, high stakes, like you don't have time to sit and pose people. Yeah, I mean, I know people who have, showed up to weddings not prepared because they've only had styled shoot experience, or they book a wedding at a level they've never shot before based on a styled shoot, and they show up and like bomb it because they don't understand what working at that level looks like or means. And So those are my qualms with the styled shoot industry. They're
Yeah,
impractical
and
half the time, but I mean, it is really gorgeous imagery. It's a great time to practice and like show people what you can do in a controlled environment. And I think that's the big asterisk here
yeah,
is like
I think
controlled
just
environment, which is not a wedding day.
treat it for what it is. Like acknowledge that it's an editorial that you've put together just to create some cool designs. We see ones come through sometimes too where it's like they're trying to pretend it's a real wedding by
Yeah,
like talking about the couple and their love story, and I'm like,
that's what gets me. Like, no.
this is fake. Like this is not a real wedding. Like you can
Yeah.
give one look at it, and people know that. Like people can smell when something is staged or when it's
Yeah.
real.
If it's only
And
a
so like
couple, it's not a
you're
real
not
wedding.
fooling anyone. Right. There's
There were
no
no
guests. It's
guests. There was no bridal
it's just a
party.
couple. Right.
It's just them.
Or they'll have like the 5 wedding vendors that were there sitting in the chairs to look like an audience, and they'll call it an
Yeah.
elopement. I'm like, it's no,
Yeah.
no,
That's not it.
no,
But
it's
yeah.
not an
And I feel
elopement.
like, yeah, us as wedding vendors, we see it. We see right through it. We're like, oh, we know that was a styled shoot. Like, this is the styled shoot blueprint. But like, would a couple who just got engaged and is shopping for vendors realize that? Probably not. But, I feel like most of the time it's not a problem, but I've definitely seen some instances pop up where it was like, oh, no, I booked someone based off styled shoot content, not real wedding content. And it wasn't a
Mhm.
great thing. But so, like, from a publication standpoint, how does that feel like putting out that content? I know you guys are very like integrous. You have integrity in the industry. Like you guys aren't sitting out here pretending like these are all real weddings if it's a styled shoot coming to you. And I feel like some publications do lean that way. But how does that feel from like a publication standpoint as far as like balancing styled shoots and real weddings and like giving couples advice and then showing them imagery from maybe not a real wedding that you were giving advice about?
I mean, I think it goes back to kind of our whole reason why we started the White Wren, and we do have some editorial stuff that we put in there. We do try to balance it with real weddings because the reason why we started the White Wren was we wanted people to be able to see that they could still have beautiful moments in life, beautiful moments on a wedding day by just being who they were and by having a beautiful day that was filled with things that were meaningful to them and people that were dear to them and to tell their story. So in the very beginning, that was our goal. We weren't after the brides that rode in on elephants. We jokingly used that phrase for a while. Like you didn't, and you still don't need to have an extravagant wedding to be featured on our thing because we want to tell people's stories. We talk. We have deeper questions that we ask about relationships and how people planned their day and a lot of other things. So that was always our goal from the beginning. Showing that you could have this beauty, and I think that translates even into the home and family stuff that we're doing now, and just that we want to showcase moments that are in between. Sometimes life is messy, sometimes it's chaotic. Most of the time it's messy, most of the time it's chaotic, and you can still find beauty in that. You don't have to be on the keeping up with the Joneses lifestyle. You don't have to have the latest kitchen design, to take your TikTok videos in or whatever. Like you just being content with where you are and finding beauty in there. So that's our mission. That is the heart of where we are. And we do have editorials. We do put them out just as inspiration.
Mm-hmm.
People do like to see it. We don't try to fake it as like this is a real wedding. It's not a real wedding. It's just pretty pictures to look at.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of where we find our balance. And especially with the podcast that we're working on launching soon, we're going to be diving more into that of like being able to talk with some of these people and get like the real stories of their lives and not just the pretty online part of it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's going to be awesome. Well, we've got 1 minute left, which is not enough time to get into anything else. But thank you for coming on today and hearing about publications. I hope this is encouraging for the people out there wanting to get published. Just like shoot with your heart, and that's going to come through. It doesn't have to be the same old. It doesn't have to be anything super new. It can just be something that's shot well and shot intentionally and something that you're proud of. Submit it. The worst thing someone could say is no to your submission, and get after it. Start creating.
Yeah, cool. Love that.
All right. Well, Brent, I'm sure I'll have you back at some point because I love talking to you. You're a good friend.
It was so fun.
Yeah, good. Okay. Well, until next time.
All right, sounds good.